Thanks everybody for joining us today. Dennis Thrald, Multnomah County Communications. I use he, him, his pronouns. We are here today to talk about the heat wave that's been with us for some days, but is now entering an even more dangerous phase as it's been with us for a long time. We want to thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work to get safety messages out over the last several days. We're here today with Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury, Environmental Health Services Interim Director Andrea Hamburg, and we are going to be joined momentarily by Mayor Ted Wheeler from the City of Portland. Our speakers are going to say a few words. Just a couple things. Again, if you are not talking, keep yourself on mute. We're going to do a Q&A after the speakers offer some messages and some words. So we ask that questions wait until that point. And again, we're really focused at this event on getting the word out about this heat emergency. So we really want to stay pretty tightly focused on that. I know there's other things that folks might want to ask about, but we ask if you follow up with us, we can help you with those other questions, but we really want to make sure that folks get the best information possible about how to stay safe during this crisis. So with that, I will hand over to Chair Kafoury to start things and come back for Q&A later. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dennis, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to start by letting you know exactly what we're facing. This latest forecast shows that we are entering the most dangerous stretch of this extended heat wave. We are about to experience the highest temperatures of an already very long heat event. And with the low temperatures predicted to stay above 70 degrees, the evenings and nights will not bring any relief. And after nearly a week of sustained heat, the temperatures that we're going to experience today, tomorrow, and possibly even Sunday will be even harder on our bodies, making the next several days critical when it comes to keeping people cool and safe. So today we're using this opportunity to implore our community to be proactive about taking care of yourselves and each other. We know from last year that the people who are at the highest risk of getting sick or dying from heat-related causes are those who are older and live alone. In fact, more than half of the heat-related fatalities last year were among our neighbors who lived in multifamily buildings. So earlier this summer, health officials reached out to high-risk apartment buildings with information and an ask to stay connected with their residents during heat events. And at the start of this particular heat wave, the city and the county sent text alerts and phone calls to mobile home residents and people who live in areas identified as heat islands. Right now, the city and the county are directly reaching out to housing providers, asking them to personally check in with their tenants if they haven't already or if they're not already doing that, to distribute life-saving information and to help coordinate free rides to cooling spaces. I'm personally joining in this effort to make calls to executive directors of housing providers to send the message that this needs to be happening at all of their properties. So to anyone who oversees an apartment building, we need you to take this guidance seriously. Your residents need to be part of an all-community effort that can save lives. If you are someone who lives in an apartment building and you are able to, please check in on your next door neighbors, being a part of this effort as well. If you can check in on your neighbors, make sure that they have the information about our 24/7 cooling shelters. We haven't had to turn anyone away from those sites, and that is our goal. People can access meals and water, and your pets can come along with you as well. So please let your neighbors know about that free rides are available at all hours by calling 211 or by taking TriMet. Don't wait for someone else to knock on your neighbor's doors. And here is my message to everyone who lives in our community. Please take this heat seriously. I know, and I understand that people are really tired of being told to take care of yourself and to look out for others. But the reality is that climate change and its consequences, like this heat wave, have no regard for our feelings or our fatigue. This weather is deadly, and we cannot afford to forget or ignore the trauma and the lessons of last summer. So I urge you to seek out cool spaces. Even a few hours of air conditioning can make a huge difference. Please know what kind of cooling resources are available and be quick to share them with others. You can visit multco.us/hot to find the most critical information all in one place. Please drink plenty of water, even if you're not thirsty, and check in with your neighbors. Check in with your loved ones and be on the lookout for those who might be struggling outside under the sun. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the work that you've done so far to get this important messaging out. And now I'll turn things over to Andrea Hamburg, who's going to help us understand why the situation in front of us is so dangerous for our community and who exactly is at greatest risk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Kafoury. I'm Andrea Hamburg, Interim Director of Environmental Health Services at the county. And as Chair Kafoury said, we are in the midst of a long, drawn out and deadly heat wave. The most important thing I want people to know right now is that this is very serious and it's not over. This heat event might not feel as severe as the June 2021 heat dome, but in many ways it is. We are on day 6, and day 7 is forecast to be even hotter. And to compound that risk, we are not getting the overnight lows. Our homes need to cool and our bodies need to recover. There have only been 5 times in the last 10 years that overnight temperatures didn't get below 70, and we're likely to have a night like that tonight. Already this week, there have been 3 suspected heat deaths, 100 heat-related 911 calls, 73 ambulance dispatches, and 32 people treated at local emergency departments. Looking back at 2021, here's what we know about who is most at risk. Last year, 72 people died of hyperthermia in Multnomah County. Of those who died, 78% were 60 or older, 71% lived alone. Of the death investigations, only 10 made any reference to an air cooling unit in the home, and 7 of those were malfunctioning or unplugged. 94% of people died in their own homes. And 58% of the people who died lived in multifamily dwellings, just a wall away from help. That's why today we're focusing on what each of us must do to protect the people around us. That starts with recognizing the risk. Heat exhaustion can cause dizziness, thirst, heavy sweating, nausea, and weakness. If a person is very weak, very sick from the heat, they might be confused and not know the danger they're in. Confusion is a very, very serious symptom and a sign that you should call 911. Before the heat becomes life-threatening, make sure that you and others, especially older people, young people, people who work outside, people who have other health conditions, make sure these people get breaks from the heat. Get someplace cool, a neighbor's house, the library, the mall, a cooling shelter. Call 211 for a free ride or get on TriMet. We are very fortunate to work closely with the City of Portland and Home Forward to get a better idea of what heat risk looks like in our community's affordable housing buildings. And if he's joined us, I'll turn it over to Mayor Ted Wheeler to talk more about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Hamburg. Thank you, Chair Kafoury, for your comments. I'm obviously very pleased to be with you here today. As you've heard, we're reaching the most important phase of this heat emergency, a phase that poses what I believe and what experts believe is the highest risk to our most vulnerable community members after days of unrelenting heat. The City of Portland, in partnership, of course, with the county, is leading a response that continues to prioritize assisting community members with the fewest resources who are facing the greatest risks. We've facilitated some innovative approaches like misting stations in parks and frankly, some common sense approaches like pop-up cooling spaces in smaller vicinities run by nonprofits, as well as relying on our faith community to offer up their spaces, in addition to sharing and providing community messaging directly to the community, as well as operating 24-hour emergency cooling shelters. within city-owned buildings. We're working with a number of community partners to distribute air conditioners to our most vulnerable residents. And we've ramped up our outreach and engagement with vulnerable populations to offer information, resources, as well as whatever heat relief is possibly available. I just want to say this, I think it's heartening to see the diversity of community partners who've stepped up this week to serve this community, from grassroots organizations like the East Portland Collective to some of our established nonprofit partners like the Q Center to some iconic retailers like the Lloyd Center. I want to thank them and other members of the private sector for doing what they can to protect people in our community who need our collective support. Each of these approaches are an important part of a larger effort to build resilience to these severe weather events within our community, which are increasing in both frequency and intensity as a result, I believe, of climate change. You'll recall last year we had an unprecedented heat event. It was called a once in a century event. Well, here we are a year later, and we're experiencing something similar. So I think we need to stop talking about these as unprecedented events or outlier events. They are not. We now have to assume that this is part of our regular protocols going forward. That means we have to shift our focus and do more to ensure that we're prepared for these kinds of heat events. For those of you like me who grew up in this city, the idea that the temperatures could reach 108 degrees is they're forecast to reach potentially later this week into the weekend, or what we experienced last year, 116 degrees, that was unthinkable. But now it's not. Now is not only not unthinkable, we have to assume that this is going to be a regular occurrence in our city, and we have to act like it will be. I appreciate the support we've received and the partnership we've developed with all of our community partners, as well as individuals who've put their shoulder to the wheel. We'll continue to strengthen and work together as we keep this community safe during not only this severe weather event, but as a reminder to everybody, it's only July. And this could be a long summer, and we need to prepare for it.
Mayor, Director Hamburg, Chair Kafoury, thank you.
And unless it's obvious, those are the end of my remarks.
I figured, thank you, Mayor. So I'll come back on video. Dennis here from Multnomah County Comms again. Just want to open things up for Q&A. So in addition to the chair, to the mayor, and Andrea Hamburg, we actually have a few other folks on this call who can help answer questions depending on what you're looking to learn about. We have Deputy Health Officer Dr. Ann Loeffler. We have Multnomah County's Director of Emergency Management, Chris Voss. We have Portland Bureau of Emergency Management Director, Shad Ahmad. We have our Department of County Human Services Interim Deputy Director, Lee Gerard. And we have our Joint Office of Homeless Services Interim Director, Shannon Singleton. So please drop your name in the chat. Also, that's what Kate, my colleague, Kate Yeiser, is going to be looking there also to let me know who to call on. So we'll call on you in order. Do that. And with that, our first requester is Elise Haas. So Elise, please come on camera and ask your question.
Thank you, Dennis. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're a little, I don't know if that's because I'm on too, but that was a little echoey.
Let me try something else. Hold on. Is this better now?
Much better.
Okay, so I'm on two computers, that's why. So first and foremost, I just want to say that we realize, Mayor, really, you have been on vacation, you're out of town. And so we do very much appreciate your availability to meet with us virtually. But with that said, we do also know that, city and county leaders could have and should have made themselves available when we were asking for interviews and asking questions about these heat-related deaths that have happened this week. So with that, what do each of you and the county chair have to say about the heat-related deaths that we've experienced this week? And also, what can you tell us about the circumstances that may have contributed to these most recent deaths so we can share that life-saving information with people right now? I appreciate what we know from last year, but it is important that we focus on what is happening right now and getting that information out to people so we can help you help them.
Thanks, Elise. I'll jump in and then I'll hand it over to Dr. Loeffler. We want nothing more than to share with the public every piece of information that we have. Anything that we can do to save people's lives, we are doing. I will say sending out information before we have it, though, can be dangerous, and we don't have the information at this moment to be able to share with the specifics with the public. And I'll let Dr. Loeffler explain a little bit more about that process.
Hi, Elise. Is my audio okay today? So as Chair Kafoury mentioned, at this moment in time, we have a scant amount of details. The medical examiner's office is very, very careful about these investigations. And they have told us before today about 3 cases that they're investigating as likely hyperthermic deaths. They, even to me, and I'm in the position of acting as their supervisor as at this time, they do not release any more information. So we don't know about their housing status, their age, underlying health conditions, and we know that those are all things that would predict risk. We literally don't know right now. And what their plan is to every day, a little bit later in the day, to give us updates about what they're tracking. They have an elaborate system of death investigators and medical examiners, very, very professional. The whole process actually takes several months, but we'll give you more information as soon as we have it.
Thank you. Our next person up is Megan Allison.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for making the time today. This question would be for Chair Kafoury. You mentioned that we're going into the most dangerous part of the heat wave. So is the county doing anything differently now compared to the beginning of this week?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that we're having this press conference today, because earlier in the week, we did not anticipate that it would be this long or this severe. And as we heard from Andrea Hamburg, the really crucial parts are the length of time of this heat wave, and then the fact that in the evenings, it's not cooling down below 70 degrees. So what we are doing is we're really doubling down on the efforts that we had earlier in the week, which was to reach out to multifamily housing providers with information that they can share with their residents. That's why we're calling through today and sending out additional emails to remind people that this is serious and that this is a crucial time. Just because they may have contacted their residents earlier in the week, that's great. I applaud their efforts. I know people are working really hard, but they need to do it again and again and again. And this weekend is going to be a time where I know that, Monday through Friday, a lot of people work 9 to 5 or those kind of hours, but this weekend is going to be a time where we need to double down on our efforts to reach our vulnerable neighbors.
And just a quick follow-up, if I may, do you think that communication and cooling shelters is enough, or do you think more steps may be needed as we go into next week?
Well, what we're doing too is we're also tracking very closely who and how many people are staying in our shelters in case we need to open additional spaces. And then we also have, in addition to working with TriMet to ensure that people have free rides, we have other contracts with providers to have people get the necessary transportation, so that people should know that there are really we want to remove all the barriers to getting people out of their hot homes and into cool spaces where they can get services that they need.
Before I hand it over, does anybody else want to have anything else to add about alerts or transportation before I?
Dennis, one thing I didn't say at the beginning that I meant to say was that the county will be changing our emergency heat declaration that we announced earlier in this week. It was supposed to expire on Saturday, and I'm going to sign an emergency declaration this afternoon that will extend that through Monday morning. We're also extending shelters, and we'll be watching very carefully to see whether Sunday night temperatures are equally high and whether we need to keep those shelters open for Sunday night, which we had not originally planned to do.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. If I may jump in here, and I'm sorry, my coverage seems a little spotty, so I apologize. Number one, the duration and the extent the agency has been expanded recently. So the temperature projection has gone up substantially. The duration has gone up substantially. As the chair correctly points out, the temperature in the evenings is not going down. That's really the danger factor from a public health perspective. The situation here, and I want to remember what we learned last year. Last year, the deaths that we experienced were concentrated in certain types of living situations. So it was senior living centers and situations. There were those who were isolated seniors, were particularly vulnerable, people in public housing, people on the streets. And so our government sponsored outreach is focused in those areas. But I think we just have to acknowledge what's going on here. This isn't, we can't call this unprecedented anymore. We can't assume, and I don't mean to be repetitive, but it's no longer an outlier. When it happens twice in 2 years, it's not an outlier, it's a trend. And that means we need to start asking ourselves, are we putting into, if you're asking government, the role of government as opposed to the private sector, individuals checking in on people, the question really is, do we have appropriate rules in place that require that temperatures be maintained at a certain high level during the winter and a certain low level during the summer in these types of facilities? I believe we are providing adequate emergency shelter based on the fact that it does not appear we have significant excess demand for people to come to government-sponsored shelters. And if we need it, of course, there's other public facilities that could be open. We have a number of private sector facilities, particularly in the central city, that are available. And I'm sure people, if we called them to bear, would be willing to step up and support people who are in danger. But from my perspective, the big thing here isn't just about what is the government response. We need to lean more on the community's goodwill to continue, as Chair Kafoury said, to check in on people who are vulnerable, ask our landlords and we know they're busy, but redouble their efforts to check on their tenants. For those who are imbued with the important responsibility of taking care of our elders, check in on them and make sure they're okay during this time, that not only do they have the appropriate temperatures, but they have access to water and other important things during this particular time that'll make a difference. So I just want to say we have to keep thinking about this, not just as a narrow government response, but really think about how are we as a community going to protect the people in our community who we care about.
Thank you, Mayor. I will, it looks like Claire Rush from Associated Press. You are up next.
Hi, yes, thank you everyone for taking the time for this. I jumped on this call a few minutes after it started, so I apologize if this was already mentioned, but I have a question about the capacity at the overnight shelters in the media release that was sent out earlier. It says there's roughly 220 people who sought relief at those cooling shelters, and that as of today, you were actively reconfiguring current shelter space to add capacity. So what capacity are you hoping to add, and what is that reconfiguration looking like? Thank you.
Chris or Shad, that might be a good question for one to be able to jump in and help with.
I can defer to Chris certainly, because I think the county is taking the lead on looking into that right now. But I can just say right now, we don't think as of now overnight we will need additional capacity. The context is really going forward into the weekend. We want to make sure that as a prolonged event, we know we will probably need additional capacity. So we're actively exploring other configurations, for example, in existing facilities, whether we can reconfigure to add within those facilities so that we're not also stressing the staff working these operations. And there are other facilities as well that if we need to bring online, we also are working to ensure that we have the logistics, supplies, and staffing necessary to address that. I think at the moment, currently, we're not ready to announce any change in our current status. But as that goes on, we'll certainly keep everyone posted.
And sorry about that, second to get off mute. Shad is exactly right, and I want to sort of repeat something that the chair said as well, is that as we need more space, we keep opening up locations. So our goal is, and we continue to be successful, we do not turn anybody away. And so if that means additional locations, or as Shad said, reconfiguring a location, we're happy to sort of continue to receive folks. And just remember that we've done everything we can to sort of remove some of those barriers to allowing people to get transportation to those needed locations as well. But right now we're happy that we still have some capacity, and we know we've got plans at least overnight Saturday into Sunday to keep those locations open.
Chris, do you want to state your name too?
Chris Voss, and I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Multnomah County.
Well, I appreciate the backup facilitation, Chair. Thank you. It takes a village. Sophie Peel-Willamette, you are next up.
Thanks for having us today. This is Sophie. This one's for you, Mayor Wheeler. You mentioned putting rules in place for certain buildings that house vulnerable communities, about temperatures, check-in protocols, that sort of thing. Has your administration put any rules in place for certain providers like Home Forward since last year's heat wave, or most of kind of the directives that you guys have given those providers at this point just general guidelines rather than, required protocols?
Sophie, I always hate this answer. As you know, under the commission form of government, I am not the housing commissioner. I am not the liaison to the Joint Office of Homeless Services. So I'm just going to speak my mind as a citizen. We now know that these types of events are no longer, quote, unprecedented, unquote. They're part of our environment. As a result, personally, I believe of a change in the environment as a result of global warming. And we need to consider more extreme weather than what those of us who are blessed to be born and raised in the city are used to. Portland has always been a very mild climate. It's mild in the winter and it's mild in the summer. But what we're starting to see is that it's colder in the winter, and we have these heat spikes, prolonged heat events in the summer. And so we now have to assume that this is the status quo going forward. And historically, it would have been ridiculous. Back in the day when I was a younger individual, if you said you had to put requirements in around making sure that there was air conditioning or cooling requirements in a building, people would have laughed at you. I mean, let's be honest. Portland's temperatures did not get high for prolonged periods of time. The temperature would drop at night after a day or two, and that would be that. But now they have become potentially deadly situations as you go 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, where the temperatures don't drop down to a degree that allows the inside temperature in an unair conditioned facility to drop to a level that is physically safe, particularly for vulnerable populations, people who are older, people who are disabled, younger people. And the reality is we now have to take that into account. So I appreciate the question. I don't know really how to respond to it other than that.
Well, Mayor Wheeler, recently you said to me you've been able to sort of overcome the commission form of government by using emergency declarations, and you have done so liberally since the beginning of the year. Why couldn't you kind of overstep the Housing Bureau or PBEM or BOIC and make an emergency declaration about implementing rules for places like Home Forward?
Yeah, and that's actually a really good thought, Sophie, and I appreciate it. This is the kind of thing that has not built over weeks or months. This is a situation that literally has changed day by day over the course of this particular week. And so I'm looking at a lot of different things. One of the things we didn't do, I saw a story, I should know better. I think you wrote it, but I don't know that for a fact, about air conditioning units and a backlog in air conditioning units. And while I do understand there's supply chain issues, and while I do understand that we've contracted with certain good providers in the community to deliver that service, if we felt as we got into the summer months that those units should have been delivered for the health and well-being of people in our community who are vulnerable, we should have put out the call to people. Community. There's a lot of guys in white pickup trucks out there. If we just said, hey, can you come and grab a unit or 2 units or 3 units, and would you be willing to deliver it to somebody who's vulnerable in our community and help them set it up? If you just ask people and have some confidence in them, I think a lot of people would have said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll take some time to do that on my way home. And so I think we have to think about this more broadly than just thinking about this narrowly as a government issue. We have to think about this as a community issue. So when it comes to the regulatory piece, definitely we're going to be looking into it. Absolutely. And I think we'd be negligent not to.
Do you think it was, sorry, one more. Do you think it was negligent to not have taken those steps after the last heat wave, knowing that, this was likely to become a pattern?
Personally, yeah, I think it was a significant oversight. I think there's always sort of this knee-jerk reaction to think about what's the government's response going to be to a crisis situation. And all too often we leave out the people in the community who really want to do something and care about this. They're passionate about other people in their neighborhood or maybe even their own building. And we should always rely on the goodwill of the community as one of our deepest and richest sources of being able to support vulnerable people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Austin, you are up next from the Oregonian.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you all for being here. My question's just pretty short. I just wanted to ask if the county is aware of any other heat-related deaths outside of the 3 that have already been mentioned.
I'll let Dr. Loeffler jump in, although I'm not seeing, oh, there she is. Go ahead.
I will go to my email. That's where I'm getting the information, and I'll pop back right on in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob, you are up next while we wait for Dr. Loeffler.
And Dennis, full disclosure, this is Elise again, and I am asking a question for a coworker who is out sick at
Okay.
the last minute, and this is not to do with the heat, so I do apologize for that. But because Mayor Wheeler, I know you've been out of town, we just wanted to ask.
At least can we wait until make sure everyone has their heat questions answered first? Because I want to.
By all means.
I want to prioritize that for this event. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
totally understand. But yeah.
Anybody else have another heat related question? Or Dr. Loeffler, do you have an update for Austin on that?
Sorry, it takes me more than a little minute. For this.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay.
Right back.
Okay.
I'll just jump in and say that, I'm sorry, Dennis. We usually get this information later in the afternoon and release it as soon as we hear. So if Dr. Loeffler does not have an email at this moment in her inbox, that doesn't mean that she won't receive one again this afternoon. And if she does, we will be sure and let people know. Thank you.
Exactly right. I don't have an email right now, and it may be coming in the next hour. Thank you so much, Chair Kafoury.
That's right. And again, we've been putting releases out as we get the information. So if we do have something later today, we will send a release, same as we did yesterday. Elise, I'm gonna, if it's possible to follow up directly with the mayor's team, I know we've got folks who we're at a little after 2:30. We've got folks who want to get to other things, and the emergency folks especially have to get into some meetings to get the response going. So I think I'm gonna actually adjourn this meeting, but I know the mayor's office is ready for you to follow up.
I'd like to take Elise's question before I go, honestly, because I'm a hard man to track down this week in particular. So I'd rather
exactly. I know you're on vacation. We don't want to, take you away from that. So just as police commissioner, we were curious, what do you plan to do to decrease the number of officer involved shootings? We had 3 this week. And can you at least kind of explain or give us some more context about the decision to not name the latest officer that was involved in the shooting?
So thank you for the question. Number one, I want people to know this, because there's sort of this thing in politics these days where, oh my God, if you take a vacation, it's a significant abdication of responsibility. I am mayor of the city of Portland 24/7, 365. I get emails, I get calls, I get text messages. I participate in earlier this week, I participated in a federal court hearing. I am more than happy to participate in this important press conference about the heat emergency. I'm mindful of the fact that on previous vacations, I have made a decision to return home, as I did last July 4th. I had to leave my child behind while I came home for 2 days for a very tragic situation that unfolded last July 4th. So I want people to understand there's no such thing as a true vacation, because it's the job requires my engagement. And so I want to acknowledge that people expect me to be present and focused on the issues. And I really just want to assure you, and I want to assure the public that I am engaged and I'm getting regular updates and briefings. And I want to thank you for the question, in particular for giving me this opportunity to express that first and foremost. Second of all, you asked a very important question about the officer involved shootings, because we really did have an unusual set of circumstances. Earlier this week, we had 3 officer involved shootings in rapid succession. And I heard it reported, and I have no reason to believe that it's not true, that this is the first time that has ever happened in the history of this city. Each of these situations is fundamentally different. They have to be reviewed separately. There is a very formal process. It is a detailed process that is run by the local district attorney that each of these officer involved shootings must go through. As frustrating as it is, I say very little about the last. As the police commissioner, I'm the last step in the adjudication process. So I'm sort of like the final judge, if you will, or the appeals court judge, if I could use maybe a slightly sloppy analogy. And so I cannot prejudge any of these situations till I've actually seen the full investigative report. Each of these 3 officer involved shootings will be fully investigated by the district attorney, by the independent police review, and internal affairs. And then the facts will be provided to me at the end. And I look forward to I will say that just based on what was reported and what I know up to this point, based on what I have read broadly reported, that it appears what we're seeing is a combination of people firing firearms in public in circumstances that are endangering the larger public. I'm really alarmed by that, because it sort of fits into our concern I have about gun violence in the city of Portland. And that's why we've taken so many actions, both internal to the police bureau, the enhanced community safety team, the focused intervention team, the community oversight with the FICOG, the emergency declaration last week to further engage those who are potential by gun violence, to address some of the issues that could reduce that this right now this summer. There is the potential that there's also some mental health issues that are coming into play here, which require us to have some broader interventions around mental health with our partners at the county and the state, of course. But I think your question is a really good one. And it's one I've been grappling with this week too. How is it that we've had 3 of these situations in quick succession, where it appears that at least in the last situation, somebody went out and, according to witnesses, not according to a police report or anything I've heard from any officer or any investigation, but just shooting dozens of rounds into the neighborhood. That is an extremely dangerous and volatile situation. And it doesn't seem to me that that leaves a whole lot of room for discretion when it comes to the response. But it raises a bunch of questions about how did that happen? What led up to this tragic outcome? And I'll continue to follow the investigations. And obviously we'll have more to say on all of this.
And that last part was, do you have any context about why they didn't release the name of the officer like they normally do?
I'd have to refer you either to the city attorney or to the police bureau, but most likely the city attorney, since this is now a matter of investigation. But I believe it was done for safety reasons based on precedents.
Thank you.
All right, thanks
There
all.
is concern that officers have been targeted.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Dennis and Kate and the rest of the team here is available for folks if they have follow-up questions, specifically around the heat event. But anything else, we're always happy to answer your questions. Dennis, did you have some final words?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming and helping us get the word out. Again, multco.us/hot. Very important for folks. And the risk is getting serious now. And that the messaging around overnight temperatures, not getting under 70, how historic that is, why we really want to have this next step of getting the word out, why we're sending those text messages out. It's very important. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work to get the word out. And we will send more releases with more updates over the weekend. So look for us there. And again, thanks to everyone who was able to speak. Mayor, thank you for coming to us from across, and we appreciate everything, and we will be in touch later. Thanks all.